Detroit, 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 Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Detroit, Detroit, different. Detroit is different. Detroit is different.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio, I have somebody that I was waiting on, but worth waiting on for a while. But the reason why is because she is entrenched in so much of how we empower each other in community. So the reputation should go without being said, but been uplifted on this show and many other shows and many other papers, really internationally at this point in time, and advocating for something that is a sad reality that I think most people have known if you've lived in Detroit for any time about what's happening with the air, the water, and just the ways that we have an environment throughout the city of Detroit, but more so specifically when we talk about how Detroit connects to downriver and so much more. So if you don't recognize who I'm speaking about, guess what? You're in store for a great episode. Theresa Landrum, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you? And thank you for the invite.
Oh, definitely. This was one, like I said, this is going to be something that goes on record, and I'm glad that it could be on record. So I always start these, and we kind of had a pre-discussion touching a little bit on it. But your family, how they got here, how many generations deep are your people to Detroit?
Well, my family goes back to the 40s. My family transitioned here to Michigan, the Michigan area, in the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
So my mom, my dad, both came from Tennessee. And of course, they were farmers, and they came here for a better life. First, my mom came here with her mom and her stepfather.
Wow.
And they settled in the city of Ecorse.
Okay.
My grandfather didn't like Michigan that much, and so he took the family back. However, they came back again.
Okay.
And back in that day, when you came from the South, you were hosted by another family member. And so when they settled in Ecorse and my grandfather decided to go back to Chattanooga, Tennessee, he transitioned another part of the family here in the home that they had.
Okay.
And then he decided to come back again,
Okay.
and they came back and they settled on a different street. And then he still didn't like it, so he left and went back. But my mom was old enough to stay, and she stayed here in Michigan, and she met my dad.
Okay. Your granddad saw that one Detroit winter and was like, whoa, going back down south.
That's probably what it was. Yeah, it's probably what it was.
Then he came back like, let me think about it a little bit more. And he's like, whoa. Back to Tennessee.
Yeah, but my mom stayed and met my dad and married my dad.
Okay.
And then they settled in Rouge, and then from Rouge, they settled in Southwest Detroit 48217. So we have to talk about the triple cities. That's Ecorse, Rouge, and Southwest Detroit. That's an area where African Americans settled, and in actuality were redlined to that area. Because when you came to Michigan and to Detroit, you were guided to certain areas. And in other words, forced to live there, and that was called redlining. So they lived in what we call on the black side of Ecorse, and then on the black side of Rouge, and then on the black side of Southwest Detroit, because Rouge, Ecorse, and Southwest Detroit, they're so intertwined, you can stand in the middle of Visitor Road and you can be in three cities at one time.
Definitely. It's something that we've touched on here and there in these Detroit is difference. And another thing that I always uplift is like being that area was one of the later communities that so many Black folks moved to. It also kept I can't think of a better term what I want to say, but some of the familiarities and some of the stories that we hear about, like all these other historic Black communities existed there well into, even we're looking at like the like well into like the 80s, like almost, as far as like the amount of like the relationship with Black professionals, with Herman Davis talking about the roller rink, and Malik Shelton talking about the Black hospital, and like just it was almost a neighborhood, a mix of that downriver Black community that was very much close knit.
Yes.
And you mentioned Chattanooga, so I want to touch a little bit always on that. You still got family back and forth and then travel between Tennessee? Okay,
yes, of course. I have cousins that still live in Chattanooga. In actuality, I had another cousin. Her and her family relocated to Detroit, and after her husband retired from General Motors, they went back. They settled in Knoxville, built a house, and then my cousin's husband passed. And when he passed, they went back to Chattanooga. So we still have an anchor in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So my cousin sends me every day. She sends me a prayer at 10 o'clock on the nose from Chattanooga.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So yeah.
That's beautiful. It's like granddad's legacy is living on. Like, hey,
grandma's too, because the women are the backbones, of family, of community. Women are the backbones.
Oh, I mean,
and people, you know what I mean. We have to talk about that. And when you mentioned Southwest Detroit, Ecorse, and River Rouge, we were our own mecca. You know what I mean? And in my research, in my history, we actually helped build the Black middle class of Detroit. Because many of our family members from other parts of the country and from the South, other Blacks, because, we just didn't come up here as an individual. When you came, community came, because you always hosted somebody from the South to help them come for a job from the South. And one of the great things that I remember being taught to me was that Southwest Detroit's historical value is we were one of the first African American communities established after the World War II. That is the second Great Migration, because the first Great Migration was after World War I, because Blacks couldn't go into the military and serve. So when they left their jobs, the white counterparts left their jobs, they often filled those jobs with African Americans and women. And so, with Ford, he went down south and he recruited African Americans to work in the factories because the white counterparts had gone to war.
Yeah.
And then, of course, African Americans fought for the right to join the military and serve and our country, because this is our country. We were actually here, in my opinion, from my research, before the indigenous people we call the Native Americans and the Mexicans. We were freed people here, and now they're finding all kind of artifacts to prove that we have influence from the Moors, the Kemets, and the Nubians here before any other ethnicity.
Very, very much. You're speaking to research that many people have, I guess, being, as we say, like the historical empirical method. One of the key anchors in those books is Ivan Van Sertima's "They Came Before Columbus," which actually, through Bob Maliki Keeney, uplifted that a lot of the researchers on that were people from Detroit. And many artifacts show that's what existed, and a lot of the whole concept of, Black folks always say, I got Indian in my family. A lot of what was quote unquote Indian in my family, like when we think of a lot of these tribes, the Maroon tribes, definitely, like my family has roots into Florida. So when you speak of like the Seminole Nation and a lot of these nations, these are what we would consider just based on hue. These are Black folks,
Black Indians, right?
Definitely.
Because we have a heritage and a legacy of Cherokee, right? And then, my grandmother was Cherokee. My other grandmother on my dad's side was Cherokee. So it's not Cherokee. It's Black. It is Black, okay? Because, we intermingled. The Indians and the Blacks intermingled. Well, the indigenous Native Americans that we look at today. They intermingle with Blacks. And right now there has been a lawsuit and been in the court where the indigenous Native Americans have sought to expel Blacks, but the court upheld that they have to include Blacks. Because if you go down through history, the white man defined anything other than white was Black. And that included the indigenous people.
Well, definitely when we get into studying a lot of this American history, you can get a lot of hards, but this is uplifted in the Trail of Tears, but the Trail of Tears connected to this, and like after definitely the Louisiana Purchase and the backwardsness of that. But I'm gonna just give you guys some more. Like I'm a big, I take my critical thinking. I take these discussions I have with my elders and different people, and I take what I read. But here's the number one critical thinking thing that lets you know that Black folks were here. You cannot find a ship of any of these quote-unquote explorers where they don't have a Black scout on them, including Christopher Columbus. And you're like, why is that Black person on this ship? Because they had the language. So how would you know the language unless you was already over there and knew that the connections were happening? And I mean all the ships. You can study that. They'll have the pictures of these scouts. They'll have like, this is the explorer, because it'd be like someone like a Christopher Columbus going to like whatever crown to say like, hey, I need the equivalent of $10 million and I'm gonna go over here and steal stuff. Well, they'd say explore. And they'd say, all right, well, if you're going to do that, you need to take that Black man because he's the person that knows the language, or this Black woman. You'd be surprised the amount of Black scouts that are on all these ships. And I don't even think it takes so much research to get that. No. But that, as I say, like I take a lot of critical thinking with this, and it's like, why is that Black person the person that knows? You kind of see it in that Woman King movie where you have the guy that's that's between both, because it's like he could speak to the homie, and he also knew how to speak to the white folks. But these relationships, and I know that's a movie representation, but a lot of this stuff is very true. Like, you know, so you'd be surprised the amount of Black scouts and just even navigating a lot of these territories. You know, Crispus Attucks is one of the stories you can hear about, but like they existed because you needed somebody that knew the language. And you know, it's like and that's the interpreter.
You have to go back to the Moors. The Moors were what? Ship people. And they traveled and they traded along those coasts. And so their influence is worldwide.
Very much so. All right. So, you guys getting a little bit of that history in this mix. And as we get into that, when you look back at your childhood, what neighborhood do you remember most? Like if you said, that's where we grew up.
Okay, my community of Southwest Detroit, 48217.
Okay.
We call ourselves the original Southwest Detroit.
All right.
Because, you know, through gerrymandering over the years, they expanded the boundaries until Southwest Detroit is now the second largest district in the city. Okay. So when I think about where I grew up, I think about the history that I was taught about the Harlem Renaissance, right? Well, we had our own Harlem Renaissance in Southwest Detroit before I was born. My mom and dad would often tell me about the people that would come to Detroit, you know, Colin Powell and Ella Fitzgerald and all those people. They would come to Detroit, and a lot of them would visit Southwest Detroit 48217. And in fact, just a few years ago, James Earl Jones died, right? And his father, Robert Earl Jones, they did vaudeville and all of that. Well, Robert Earl Jones actually stayed at our house.
Wow.
And if you remember that movie with Richard Pryor and Red Fox.
Is it Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars? Harlem Nights.
Harlem Nights. Well, Robert Earl Jones, I think, was in that movie.
Wow.
I think it was that. If not, it was The Stinger. One of them, he was in one of those movies. A couple of those movies. That was James Earl Jones's father. And if you know anything, James Earl Jones come from Michigan. Off of a farm. And actually, James Earl Jones's first cousins still live in Southwest Detroit, 48217.
Ain't that something?
And matter of fact, his first cousin is our state representative, Tyrone Carter.
Oh, man.
Because James Earl Jones's mother, James Earl Jones's aunt is Tyrone Carter's mother. Mrs. Irene Carter.
I never knew that. And in the times connecting with him, you know, it's like I think of James Earl Jones.
Yes,
I'm thinking Mufasa.
That's his first cousin, right? And so we have a rich history. When I came up in 48217, we didn't identify it as 48217, but we later learned with the work of Dr. Dolores Leonard, we identified ourselves as Southwest Detroit 48217 to distinguish ourselves from Greater Detroit so that we could highlight our rich community, the vibrance, and what we had established in our community. I was born at an all-black hospital, Sunby Hospital, up on Visitor Road, the street I told you about, where if you stand in the middle of Visitor Road between Bassett and the alleyway, you'll be in Ecorse, River Rouge, and Southwest Detroit all at once. We had black pharmacists. We had black floors. We had black restaurants, black hotels, black floral shops, shoe shop, barber shops. We all had that along Visitor Road, laundromats, stores. So when I came up, I saw black entrepreneurs, family-owned businesses. All the businesses in my community that I would patronize as a youth were black. We did have whites. Miami Drugs was a white pharmacy. We did have the Five and Dime, which was back in the day called Kresge's. Right? But then black ownership came in. So when I grew up with black owners owning their own businesses. Our doctors lived in the community. Our teachers lived in the community. Our judges lived in the community. So we had our own Harlem Renaissance. You know, we had the Temptations, Gladys Knight, all of them come down to Pistols or the Downriver Lounge and sing. We've actually had one of the Temptations' children, some of his children, they lived in Southwest Detroit. He would visit the school that I went to as elementary school.
Okay.
Right? And that was Melvin Franklin. So we have a host of richness in our community. You know, I remember Marvin Gaye coming to visit my spiritual mother. We had a whole lot of entertainers come to Southwest Detroit. You talked about the Rollercade. They actually performed at the Rollercade. You know what I mean? And so I grew up knowing this and understanding this. Matter of fact, I grew up with the musical director, Mr. King, who was the musical director for Motown.
Wow.
His family, the Kings, they lived in our community, grew up in our community, and one of the grandchildren still lives in our community. So I grew up with that richness.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely have heard so many of the stories. And I mean, one of the things even stands out in my mind, I need to catch up with them, but Kevin Hansen that had the Johansson Art Gallery for years, he was like, yeah, man, part of the things where we could even shovel the snow of the dentist and then, you know, you get some money off on some of your dental bill, you know what I mean? So that closeness as I think the waves of the start of the suburbs, I mean, it's always uplifted the white flight of Detroit, but there was definitely during, especially my time, there was like a black flight of a lot of professionals from communities. And I want to say that Southwest Detroit dealt with that in like such another way from these discussions. What like my neighborhood, like here, Linwood, Davidson, like, you know, a lot of this community, if they had the access, they were looking at definitely like a Southfield or Oak Park a lot sooner than people in your community were.
And a matter of fact, I know a lot of people know this, Vicki Winans, right? Formerly married to Pastor Marvin Winans.
Yeah.
She grew up 2 streets over from me. She actually lived across the street from my uncle and aunt. And my uncle at the time was a pastor of the Firstborn Church of the Living God on Hyson and 19th Street in Ecorse, Michigan. So I grew up with the, matter of fact, we, nickname of Pastor Winans was Peanut. And he actually was an insurance man that came and people bought insurance from him years ago. And then, we have that. And Tim Bowman, right, on Beatrice Street, right across the street. So we have that richness, and a lot of people don't know about it. And when they talk about Southwest Detroit, they say, oh, I know what Southwest Detroit is. And I said, really? Oh, yeah. I come down there and I eat at Armando's and Mexican Village and Xochimilco's. And I said, that's Mexican town. I said, but we're talking about Southwest Detroit, the black part of the original. And how it was is that my dad was a union man, of course, working for the loco.
Okay.
doing construction, and my father worked at the local industries. Back in time, Great Lakes Steel, DTE, Zug Island, Ford Rouge plant, because he worked with the laborers and they did the dirty work of tearing down the coke ovens, which we've been working against for years in the work that I do for environmental justice work. And my dad, I never forget, as a child, my mom would pile all the kids in the car. We would go and we would wait to get my dad off his job. And I never forget him coming across that bridge, dirty, just black soot everywhere, with his helmet, his goggles, his whole coveralls, his shoes just black from going in and working, tearing down the coke ovens.
Yeah. So you also touch into some of those other realities that we speak about that were offered to a lot of the Black folks that came in from the migration in both waves. And let me be honest too. Black folks were given some of the worst jobs in infirmaries and things like that, but also being honest about this. Even to it's a show on the History Channel about like different things that happen, but like the whole concepts of like these waves of just like OSHA laws and safety and more still needs to strengthen. This is all relatively new. I mean, if you're building a skyscraper in 1930s, I mean, you were really literally like, 20 stories up, drilling in things. And I mean, some of these jobs in a lot of this industrialization of America, I mean, some jobs would say like, it like 2 to 5 people would either die within the year or be injured to a point where they could not work. And, this isn't any like all of the things in labor movements that become things that protect. Like, okay, you can get health insurance. You're not going to like, get any like harmful chemicals poured on you and things like that. And all of the settlements for it. I mean, if you look at the history of a lot of American history, it's
that's why
very strong atrocities.
Unions are so very, very important. I am a retired UAW worker, and I'm still in the union. I still pay my union dues.
Okay.
So unions are very, very important. And you have to realize, you talk about the Teamsters, you talk about the labor, you talk about the UAW members, you have to look at the fight that they had to fight fight for benefits, to bring OSHA in for safety regulations on those jobs, because being exposed in those jobs has caused a lot of illness among the workers. And because getting back to growing up, my dad could walk to work if he chose to when he had a job at U.S. Steel or he had a job at Marathon. He could walk to work. He didn't have to drive. And Black people, they began to make a living wage working in these factories, right? And they were given equal pay at the time. So this is what helped African Americans in Southwest Detroit be able to purchase homes. And, our generational wealth comes from home ownership. And Black people were stopped by the federal government, the mortgage companies, the banks, the real estate companies, and the insurance companies would not insure your home or give you a loan or for housing. So many of the Black people bought their homes on land contract.
Yes.
My mom and dad bought our home in Southwest Detroit on land contract. I'll never forget, Mrs. Hardbridge would come to the house every Sunday, once a month on Sunday, to collect $11 to purchase our home in Southwest Detroit, because our parents and African Americans could not get loans because of the institutional racism, the systemic racism that was established after slavery from the Jim Crow laws. And in my opinion, slavery never ended. Jim Crow never ended. It just evolved.
In certain ways, that argument can definitely be made. But speaking to that, I tell people, even in the deeds to both houses, as you looked at me walk from my house to the incubator space, but you look on the deeds of these, it'll say like no Negroes, and usually it'll say like no Negroes, no Jews can own this property. It was the fact that many like communities like this that had many Jewish people, they were open to breaking the covenant and selling properties to Black folks. Whereas just like, I guess what would be considered, this is another thing actually you already touched on, like race itself is a social construct that comes into place as time goes on. But here it becomes even more of a heightened reality, because many of the many of the Europeans that were not necessarily exalted into society, like the French, the British, and the German, dealt with discriminations as well. Not to the level of what we've dealt with, but discriminations as well. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Sometimes it would say like no Italians, no Jews, no Polish, no Irish, no
exactly.
Like
so
many
discrimination has existed.
Yeah.
But racism is a different kind of animal.
Definitely.
Because in my opinion, systemic racism is so interwoven into the fabric of America, it can never be separated. And when we look at slavery, African Americans, more than any other race, experienced the discrimination in housing, education, health, and wealth. And as you look at the history of America, any time a Black community and Black folks, I just say, pull themselves up from their bootstraps, their communities were destroyed. Roseville wasn't the only one. Tulsa, Oklahoma wasn't the only one. But if you look through history, you will see how they went, and out of hate and racism, whites went to the Black communities and destroyed them. And, I'll never forget, I can't quote it verbatim, but Martin Luther King, after he fought so hard for integration, he realized that we had integrated into a burning house.
Yeah, he definitely Crisis of Community, one of the last books that he wrote. I would urge people to read that, and also as we look back to historic figures, tap into and sometimes just reread things that you may have read even when you were younger. But the Fannie Lou Hamers, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely or Kwame Ture. Tap into a lot of stuff. I mean, somebody that I've been tapping to actually, and it just lines up with Women's History Month so much that I know that oftentimes because of the time he served in prison, the work of a Nelson Mandela is uplifted, but the work of Winnie Mandela is. I think it definitely needs to be studied, looked at, even after his unlawful release and the way that she's advocated
you mean
to
imprisonment and then his release.
Yeah. So that's what. You're right. Unlawful, like apartheid, was definitely wrong. But when I look at Winnie Mandela's taken. I do believe that I'm at least pulling something from looking at a lot of the work she did, who she worked with, how she worked with, and then even being able to challenge Nelson Mandela after the fact.
Who do you think continued it while he was in prison? It was Winnie Mandela. In order for him, after his release, to become president, the work and the foundation that she had laid outside of the imprisonment that he had, that was the foundation that he could step off into to eventually become president. Okay? And we have to look at that. And when we look at the history, the counterparts, man and woman, the fight for freedom for the slaves, man and women, the Nat Turners, the Harriet Tubmans, different, even though they may have been working in silos, they were working for the same common cause. Free people that should never be enslaved by another race. And so economically and socially, educationally, and health, and mentally, the trauma that we have experienced as African American, it is shaping our future today. Even now, with what we have now, we have all these people that are in the House of Representatives and Congress, the Senate, and what have you. The majority of these people are white Caucasian. And the representation of minorities, Black and women, look at the comparison and the ratio. It's unequal. So injustice and inequality exists in America, and it has to be brought out and talked about.
And in that, I definitely, I'm sure, because I want to get more from your story, because so much of the path you've walked. Where do you go to high school?
I attended Southwestern High School on 4th Street. The high school has now been torn down and bought by Bedrock, Dan Gilbert, and they have built a company on the school site. It's heartbreaking. That school should not have ever been torn down.
What was your high school journey like? What do you remember? What was the feel then?
My journey was, as I mentioned, we came from Southwest Detroit 48217. So we were feeders to the junior high school, which was Hunter, which is now torn down. That was also located in 48217. We used to have 5 schools in our school district, 4 actually in the school zip code of 48217. We had Jeffries, we had Fisher, we had Mark Twain, and then we had Boynton. Then we had Hunter. That was our junior high school. And then when we went outside of the zip code, it was Southwestern High School, which is in Delray, Michigan.
Yeah.
And, heavily industrialized. Back then in my day, we had Cadillac, we had the Fleetwood Cadillac, we had Turnstead, the subsidiaries and these factories that fed the automotive industry. So we were a working class community.
Okay.
Because many of my friends and neighbors, we remember the parents having 2 jobs. One worked at Dana Corporation at midnight, and then in the daytime they went over to Great Lakes Steel.
Okay.
So many times our parents were working 2 jobs.
Okay.
And so it was rich. As I mentioned, we vibrant. We had gardens in every yard. Every yard had more than 1 fruit tree, right?
What did you guys have in your backyard?
We had apricot. We had, I think, a peach tree, apricot tree. We had the grapevines, all of that.
So a lot of that stuff, to grow some of that stuff, it was already kind of there already. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Sims had the Michigan cherry trees with the strawberry patches. Mr. George's family, he had a sunflower field. Then you go down to the Holmes house. They had the plums. They had the grapes. They had the apples and the pears. So each yard had a variety of different fruit trees, and as I mentioned, everybody had a garden. And by my father coming from the South, we had 6, 7 gardens because my dad, when he was able to, he bought my sister a house. He bought my brother a house, and he was buying each one of his children a home.
Did everybody kind of have a home like in that same neighborhood?
Yes. And that's, we could walk to each other's houses. You know what I mean? And we had my brother had a house on Omaha. My other brother had a house on Campbell. My sister had a house on Waring. And then I had a house on Liddesdale. So we were all in there within walking distance.
So now I also got to ask, are you like the oldest, youngest, in the middle? Where you at?
Oh, no. I have a blended family.
Okay.
So I was the youngest, but now I am not the youngest. So when we look at our blended family, it was 10 children.
Okay. What was it like? Do you even remember being the youngest, or is that just something?
I remember being the youngest until my family had a tragedy, and we brought my mom and dad brought in my 2 cousins. Their mom died at a young age, so I gained 2 sisters.
Okay.
Because I had all older brothers and an older sister.
What was it like being the youngest, even navigating school? I'm guessing.
Well, it wasn't difficult because everybody knew everybody. The teacher, the counselor lived across the street. The teacher lived down the street. It wasn't hard. And going to school, we all would gather at the corner. If you lived on Deacon or Annabelle or Beatrice, off of Francis, where I lived on Liddesdale, off of Francis, we would gather at the corners and we would walk to school together.
Okay.
And then when they built the newer school, which was Mark Twain, they split. And so where I started school at Boynton, then they moved me to another elementary school called Mark Twain that was closer to my home, but around the corner. So we had to change. But it was all I can think of is family. And I'm telling you, every weekend, there was somebody doing something to help somebody pay their bills.
Wow.
We had a fish fry, a rent party, all of that. And then, as I told you, my dad was a farmer. So the Folks family that owned the Rollercade roller rink, Mr. Folks actually built that roller rink from the ground up for his wife.
Wow.
And if you know anything about the Midtown that was established a few years back, that was the Rollercade family working with, I think, Dan Gilbert to create the Midway.
Wow.
And they had the Rollercade down there for several years, couple of years. That was the Folks family. They came out of River Rouge. They were always business-minded entrepreneurs. One was a policeman. They owned a rollercade. They were people that put their money into entrepreneurship. The generation now, Kyle Black, which is the grandson of I'm gonna call her Mama Folks. He is now running the rollercade. I think I'm not sure if he's the third or fourth generation. He's just opened up a restaurant in honor of his mom, Lisa.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Right. And then she went on to be a state trooper traffic control, and we worked together. Then she and I went to, took the test and all that, but I went on to be a prison guard for the state of Michigan.
I was just about to ask after high school, but where did you head after high school? What was the thought process?
Right. Well, by me, it being so many children, I couldn't afford to go to college. My dad, as I told you, my dad was a construction worker, so his job was sometimes based on season.
Yeah.
Now, construction happens 24/7 all year round. It doesn't matter. But back then, they were laid off.
Yeah.
So often he was laid off. So I couldn't go to college. So I entered into the workforce.
Okay. Where do you start with work? Were you already thinking like, okay, let me get something down here in industry? What was the thought process?
Well, the thought process was just get a job.
Okay.
Because I wanted a car.
Okay.
I was always one of those curious children. So I would catch the bus to the Olympia Stadium, and down to the Fox Theater. And so I wanted a car. So my whole focus was get a car. So I entered into the workforce working for General Motors.
Okay.
And so I was able to, back then, you could have your car note removed from your paycheck.
Okay.
So I didn't have to worry. So I actually bought my car through, taking it out of my paycheck every Friday.
Okay.
And whatever. So
and I'm guessing, so you already spoke of being UAW. That's when you started at UAW. So you've been a UAW member for a minute now. Then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget it. It was a lot of discrimination and actual traumatizing in that factory because back then in the 70s, women were not widely accepted. They said, you want to do a man's job, you got to do a man's work. And they actually traumatized you and tortured you on the job, mentally and physically. So that was a hard fought, to try to be an electrician, to try to be a millwright, and stuff like that. Women, we had a hard time in the factory.
Well, I mean, when we talk about the iteration of like the OSHA laws and the safety for that, when we look at like a lot of the discrimination that women faced, and this is just so unique that I had in my college journey at Henry Ford College, I have a couple that stood out at Henry Ford Community College, but one was my business law professor for my associates was actually one of the she was a woman in one of the first it was a what is that, like when the case comes together with all these people, I'm forgetting what that law, what the style of case, and I'm sure I'm gonna remember as soon as I walk out of here. Class action lawsuit. It was a class action lawsuit against the state of Michigan because she was working actually as a social worker then, and she was just talking. So we did like a whole a series, kind of a little bit about her case and just like how sexual harassment ends up being presented. Yes. So like when we think about sexual harassment, I mean so many things when we look at like justice for people, but especially justice for women. I mean, the like 70s, 80s, and even 90s. I mean, the 90s start with, certainly probably, as far as I'm concerned, one of the worst Supreme Court justices ever, a Clarence Thomas case against Anita Hill. But even at that time, I'm a child, I'm looking at this and I get the understanding that, this is really graphic for a person, but like, he takes his pubic hair and like puts it on something that she's drinking, like as a way, because she would not accept his sexual advances. And it's even at that time, just due to how things would happen, like it was like a thing like, well, she shouldn't be working in the office with
That's
him.
right.
Like this thought process is just so prevalent at a time where like a lot of these things about all workplace safety, but definitely when it comes to women in certain spaces, and even, just from the women I know in the family that have worked there, the whole boys will be boys comment, or locker room talk. It basically is like a justification for objectifying women while working, and that was very prevalent depending upon where you will work, just period.
Yeah, and then what we don't talk about in the workplace, of the factory, and even in the work that I do currently, which is not work, is really volunteerism, to help my community, you still have that mentality that you walk into a room, it's men. Right? And you have that condescending conversation that you shouldn't be there. You have that, oh, you're a subordinate, not an equal. So we have that in the workplace, and even to this day, no matter where you work, women face that. As you can see, a lot of the federal workers that ran and helped keep our government stable and established were women.
Yeah.
And if you see with this current administration, 350,000 or more Black women have lost their federal jobs.
Definitely.
And now they're doing that. And if you look at, they just did a piece and about there's the American Treasury handles $82 trillion. And out of those $82 trillion, only 1.4% are women and minorities that are handling the contracts or helping to disperse or utilize our taxpayer dollars. So you still see the discrimination today. If you see a woman, even in movies, her male counterpart actually makes quite a bit more than she does, and they're fighting for equal life. Look at the basketball, right? The WNBA, women are fighting for equal pay. With the against the EPA. A lot of the men support it, right? Women should get, but the sports, everything, they don't get that recognition. And in actuality, they're the supporters that help that train move.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about like what the balance is, and this is definitely where a lot of critiques, even in a lot of the struggles for justice for our people alone exist, where it's not a movement that I can think of would not be so existent and so present without so much of the support of Black women. Like, so like definitely the critiques on the civil rights movement, the critiques on the Black Power movement, and the anchors that so many women played in most of those movies. I mean, even today, I mean, like I always say, I mean, look at the Black church, because I can definitely tell you that who's supporting the Black church versus who's leading a Black church. I mean, it's almost like a one to one.
Look at it. Look at. I often say this. People get offended and they get very offensive and all that. Oh, well, that shouldn't be said. Who supports the church? Women.
You got
the
that
hospital,
right.
The schools, the home.
Very
women,
much so.
Right? And so you have to look at the inequality and you have to address it. You know, many people don't like women standing up. Oh, she shouldn't be saying that, or this, that, and the other, or she shouldn't be here. And you still have that today.
Yeah.
They will not look at women as equals. So even in this environmental justice work that I do currently, addressing the poor air quality, the challenges we face with pollution in our soil and our water.
Yeah.
When we're talking to our regulatory agency, we're talking to white men.
Yeah.
And we do have women that are being put into these positions where they can be the conduit or the liaison, but we're still dealing in the white mentality, the white culture.
Yeah.
Right?
And to that, you're shifting me right to something else similar to what we speak about. And that's really so much of like how I connect with you and how people speak of you, and definitely the work that you've led for so long. Like almost immediately when I hear Southwest Detroit, I think a couple things. You're high in the list of things. I think of I think of the Perry Watson teams in the 80s, the high school basketball. I think of the roller K. I think of you because I've shifted my thought process from looking at it so much as a place where a lot of pollution still exists, and more so recognizing that this is also iterations into the reality of America itself. That same show I was watching was also on the whole concept of like they were talking about lead and unleaded. Like at one point in time, I mean, it'll blow people's mind, but like at one point in time, you drive to a gas station and be like, hey, you want regular or unleaded? Meaning that regular gas was leaded glass, and the people that worked in these plants, because there was a lot of white men, started going, they started having so many psychiatric and like psychotic episodes connected to this. They're like, we got to study this, though the poisoning of lead and what it could cause goes back as far as like, I think they say like Benjamin Franklin. So these scientists believe that wrote like a letter saying like, yo, I was exposed to lead and this kind of made me go crazy. So the information goes back even further than the United States of America, but up until, and it's like, damn, that was my lifetime. Up until 1996 to have leaded gas was just one of those things that you can still have a choice. So these thought processes, how you could come across these chemicals. What I've noticed working with other environmental justice work in like, definitely when I think of my work with Solidarity, We Want Green Too, and then just other waves and finding out more, the thought process is always that like, wow, this is a movement and you got some people that are grounded in the cause. But my observation that I've had in this space, it's been tragic because it's like a lot of movements where it's like they'll put a black face in front to show like, this is how messed up it is. Look at this black family, right? And advocate for that for like 3 years. And then when the opportunity comes for like a settlement or just cause or how to respond to this, that black family now moves like far out the way. And it's all these people that you never knew existed, even though the person, you know what I'm saying, that seemed cool, and you know, the white guy with the locks and the dashiki, now he's like, hey, I gotta bring my cousin in, and my cousin's a special lawyer. He knows how to do this stuff better than we do. And it's like, hey, do you ever go back to help that family? You've been one of the voices that I've seen walk these steps. And it's sometimes tragic, the iterations of the lack of intelligence associated with this that is deemed, and some of the struggles, and how long you've advocated and still have so many relationships and community connected to this. But like, I've had to like, you know, I looked at this back with things like, you know, it's like in my mind, I guess I compartmentalize like, oh, okay, that's what Black people had to deal with like way back in the day. But no, it's so concurrent. It's still so much happening. You know what I'm saying? And
it's really around education. And that's what I work on. Dr. Dolores Leonard, Rhonda Anderson, formerly of the Sierra Club, she's retired now. And now her daughter has, Swatu, has picked up a lot of the work. It's around educating people. And the challenge we face is that the struggle, daily struggle to survive and live. People are struggling to keep their lights on, keep their water on, keep food on the table, and keep a roof over their head. So they're not really putting at the forefront of their mind the environment, what's impacting them, because that daily struggle is real. So it's not that they're not interested, or it may be on the back of their mind, who knows, but our job is to educate and bring it to the forefront, to look at our environment and see how our environment is impacting us. And what we call environmental justice that we fight for is because of all the environmental injustices that we have had over the years. Now, growing up, we were surrounded in my community of Ecorse, River Rouge, and Southwest Detroit of industry. Not to say anything less than what our Melvindale and our Dearborn neighbors have, because they have the same challenges, right? But African Americans were, in my opinion, more exposed because of the redlining where we were forced to live. Now, what we had that was in River Rouge, Ecorse, and Southwest Detroit, we had the black side and the white side. The whites lived across Jefferson and across Outer Drive. And in River Rouge, they lived across Jefferson and across Visiger and across Pleasant. But what we noticed was, and that they did not join in, they're joining in, I think now, was that they were just as exposed and more exposed than we were. Because the white side was closer to the industry than the black side. even though we dealt with a lot of the racism. And in the environmental justice fight, I often tell people when I do the toxic tours and when I speak, the environmental justice movement was born and bore on off the backs and the work and born because Black women lifted their voices about what could possibly be harming our health.
And in that, I want to ask, what's the first, I guess, organization, action, or meeting you went to? What was the first thing in your work where you like, I'm gonna join this cause when you see something in reference to some of the environmental justice?
It wasn't me saying I'm gonna join this cause. I was brought into the environmental justice movement out of necessity.
Okay.
Necessity of wondering and trying to understand why so many of our residents and family members and ourselves were being sick with cancer, diabetes, hypertension, COPD, lupus, MS, leukemia, sarcoidosis. And what we did years ago, working, and we're talking about the environment. Yeah. The environment encompasses everything. Every social movement falls under environmental justice because your environment is where you live, how you eat, play, work, and pray. That's your environment, right? And years ago, I'll never forget, I was working nights at General Motors. And the elders, of which I'm the president now of the original United Citizens of Southwest Detroit, well, it was back then called the United Citizens of Detroit. But a fracture happened, and a faction separated over here. And to identify the elders, changed the name to the original to separate it from the United because of the fraction. And so they were talking about well injection of toxins out in Belleville or Ypsilanti or Inkster somewhere. And that's dangerous, where they, shoot pollution down into the shale rock and it's supposed to hold it. But we know that water seeks the lowest level. And if you're shooting poison down in those, in my opinion, those rocks and whatever, it's going to seek the lowest. And go into the waterway.
And this kind of is very prevalent even when we think about the Flint water crisis.
Yes.
And see, this is where it gets back to my critical thinking. The minute that the leadership in Flint at that time made a decision to do that, the General Motors plant immediately said, well, we can't use that water anymore. So this only heightens the reality that a lot of these people have already known, have done the research, they know what the harm is, but these are a group of people we care less about.
Right. And what it is, we have to realize that we had family in Belleville, family in Inkster, family in Ypsilanti. Those were our rural areas. Yeah. And a lot of those spaces and places became landfills where drive it away from the urban area, from the city, because we're building, we want that. And they were dumping it in areas that would be farmland. And a lot of the people still existed off of well water. So just think, if you're injecting poison down there, it's going to contaminate the well water. Yeah. Right? Not only the surface water, but the well water as well. And then eventually into what we call our fresh drinking water sources. So that was many years ago, over 30 years ago that happened. And so we were asked to, the organization under our elders was asked to come and support. And so that's how I got in. The elder people said, Theresa, we need younger people. Come on. We were going to support the people that were fighting the well injections of pollution. That was many years ago. That was back in the 80s and, and probably the 70s, but I wasn't aware of it.
Now, as this is happening and what's concurrent too, and you've uplifted this already, you're working, you got all this other stuff on plate, because this is always, I think, the thought process of any time we're organizing communities and people.
Yes.
It's like people got stuff like right in front of their face. How are you balancing? And then as you enter this space, so even before I even want to get to the balance, what do you think was what's the best way to phrase this? What touched your heart so much to want to make sure that you were able to be present for those elders that called upon you?
What happened is, so that was that we didn't understand what it was. We didn't understand that at the time. Later came the knowledge of environmental justice through the work of Miss Rhonda Anderson, as I said, formerly of the Sierra Club, because. After that, after we joined in, went on back to our little lives, working in the factory, doing what we do, going to college, and stuff like that. And then came the salt company. The salt mine, the salt company is in 48217.
Yeah.
And at the time, growing up, getting on the bus, when we go to our high school, we had the Morton salt. Morton salt is the table salt. The salt company is the road salt.
Yeah.
And so I always look up at the little girl with the galoshes and the raincoat and the umbrella going past that salt mine, because we have two salt mines that are near the Morton salt was on the mouth of the Rouge River, and the Detroit Salt Company is right there on the west side of the Rouge tributary that runs there, because we have 3 bascule bridges. Southwest Detroit, Ecorse, and River Rouge, we were separated from Greater Detroit by 3 bascule bridges. Those are the bridges that go up and down. So in order for us to get to Greater Detroit, our main street was 4th Street or Jefferson, and or if we did go up 4th Street or whatever, or go to Back Road, or go up I forgot the street. I'm going to say not Mellon, but I can't think. Dix. To get to the 3rd bridge, that was the Dix Miller Bridge. That was over by the Ford Rouge Steel Mill. Right? Yeah. So the communities of Ecorse, Southwest Detroit, and River Rouge, we were sandwiched in between Great Lake Steel and the Rouge Steel Mill.
Yeah.
So we were getting lead exposure from both, because they were both having fallout. But to say that when I was a child, we learned that I-75 was being built. And if you know anything about spatial racism and transportation racism, the Federal Highway Association, they often, when they mapped out roads, they ran the roads through the middle of black communities. That's why we had Paradise Valley and Black Bottom destroyed, because of I-75 and 375 coming in. So we look at racism on the holistically. Environmentally, forced redline to live in areas where the air was poor, transportation, the roads coming through black communities. So we have to look at how these things were mapped out.
And I also want to just tag, people be like, "Oh, you be talking," but this is information I can share with you all. In the iterations of my life, a little bit or whatever that I've had, truck driving was one of them. As a truck driver, you start seeing just a lot of just spaces differently. One of them is definitely Southwest Detroit, because chances are if you drive anything locally, you're going to definitely pick up some loads to go or take and leave. One of those places you pick up loads is a place that you're talking about. It's called Salt City. So unless you go underground and drive into this place, it's like my whole life, I never knew this place existed.
Oh, wow.
And it's, it's things going on. It's always definitely some buildings. It's some little, it's like like I tell people, it's like a truck stop world of things. But clearly, all of that stuff, when we look at the smokestacks, we look at the oil refineries, we look at all of this stuff going on, common sense would be just, even at my young age when I was doing that, and that was 20, 22, 23, a little bit of 24, I still could say, I know why they say you probably should wear a face mask over here, because just all the stuff that was over there.
Because we'll talk about Delray, but let's get about the salt mine. And this is how I really came into the movement of really focusing on that, because of the salt mine. And as you said, Salt City, underground, 1,100 feet underground. You could take the elevator. They used to do tours. They don't do tours anymore. But the salt shafts, people don't know that Detroit is on top of the largest, in my opinion, salt vein in the nation. All the way to Ohio to Sault Ste. Marie. We are on salt. And you have to look at those layers, because we often have to do education. We have to show the people where the layers are and then where they're excavating salt. Because back in the 80s, we had a challenge. And what it was, the salt company had been sold, but in actuality, they sold the company, and they wanted to store toxic waste in the shafts. But the shafts, the salt company, from my understanding, Canadian family owned it, and they was shut down because of instability of the shafts, right? And but when the company was sold, somebody decided in all their ingeniousness, we can store toxic waste underneath in those shafts. Well, salt is a corrosive and it erodes, right?
Yeah.
So what if the containers or whatever they were putting eroded? Well, then, as I mentioned, the salt company is on the mouth of the Rouge River, which leads into the Detroit River.
Yep.
Detroit River has intakes on both Canadian and American side. Then it leads into
international
Lake St. Clair, which is our fresh water provider. And our fresh water provider provides water for over 86 million people with our Canadian neighbors and our neighbors, U.S. neighbors. So if you got poison going into that water, you're poisoning people. So I was, again, called upon by the elders to go to our city council and fight to stop them from storing toxic waste in the salt mine. And we were successful.
Yeah.
Fought that off. Well, then go back to your little life, doing your work and going to college and taking care of your family, and me at the time taking care of my mom and dad, which both had cancer. The neighbor across the street had cancer, so we had all kind of diseases.
So as you talk about that now, they call that they call it the sandwich generation, but meaning basically like you're caretaking for elder family members and you have children, like between it. It's like they call that now, like it's always new terms for everything.
Right.
But you're in an iteration of that and you're recognizing some of these common illnesses.
Yes.
Amongst the people in the community.
Right. And so then came how I really got into it. I was forced into it out of necessity. I didn't say, wake up and say, this is going to be my career, because I didn't even know what environmental justice was. It was introduced to me, as I told you, by Rhonda Anderson and Dr. Leonard and Dr. Leonard's sister, Miss Miller, because they were Sierra Club members. But then came the issue of Dr. Leonard. She worked in Jeffrey schools, and she went up and she became a doctor of education, and I think she became an adjunct professor at Wayne State.
Okay.
She had retired, and I was home from work one day, and blasted. We boom, heard some rumbling, and what is that? Explosions, not knowing and understanding what was happening. But the salt company had reopened and they were excavating salt, and they were actually blasting to excavate the salt off the walls. And they were using the same mixture of chemicals and fertilizer that Timothy McVeigh used to blow up the Federal Mall building in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
And they were using those things to blast to get the salt pillars off. And so we began that fighting the salt company, because we could feel the vibrations. We could hear it every day at a certain time.
Yeah.
And the ground began to sink. Your driveway began to crack. People noticed their walls had cracks and the foundations of their houses had cracks. And we felt that it could be possibly that these man-made explosions and earthquakes were having an impact.
And to that point, like I say, I'm thrusted into also thrusted into home ownership. It's a couple things in home ownership that you fear the most that most people tell you. One, you don't want to get a new roof. You don't need to have a new roof. That can be a process. I've bought a new roof. I don't think I've ever spent more money on anything in my life. And it's also like it was weird connection, because a lot of my roof money also came in money I got from my mother's passing life insurance, but it was needed, and she was one of the main ones saying you need a new roof. That you don't want, which is weird, and I think a lot of people in Southwest Detroit probably deal with this too. You also don't want to have to redo the line that goes from your house to the sewer system. That you don't want that. But the most scary thing that they always tell you is that if the foundation of your home is off, it's one of those things that it's kind of like, you guys know, we from Detroit. When they say like, hey, if your engine gone, just get a new car.
That's right. They can condemn your house.
Yes.
And in fact, they had just condemned a building because the gentleman paid like close to $70,000 or more, and they just condemned the building. Well, no, forgive me. I don't know how much I can't remember how much. I don't know if he sold for $100,000. I can't recall. But the gentleman thought he could renovate the building. But when the city came in and inspected, they said, your foundation gone. We condemned the building. So he just spent $70,000 having the building torn down. So we knew where I mentioned earlier our generational wealth. Our generational wealth come from our home ownership. So if our foundation is destroyed, there's our wealth, right? So people, I just got a brand new driveway laid, cracked up, people's porches, people's windows and doors were off. And so we had a hard time getting up, and we couldn't understand. So we tried to document it, and we did document it. We videotaped and went into people's houses. All of a sudden, all these things happening to your house. And when we went to, we sued. And but what we found out was the courts would not want you to. We got a lawyer to try to sue, I should say. They dismissed everything because they wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow you to sue on that. But we were successful in a small group going before city council, talking to city council, explaining to them, and bringing some of them out. They actually came, and when they went into your backyard, they could walk and whoop, go down. That's a sunken ground that wasn't there before until we noticed.
This.
Right. So we was documenting the damages, and we were successful in getting the city council to stop their contract or hold up the contract with the salt mine if they did not adhere to certain things. So they decided to change their method of excavation and change their direction and move away from where they were blasting. But this is what they told us. We were given permission by the city council.
Now, this is the other arc of a lot of the scary things that happen in reference to being a resident, period. You're a resident, you live in life, you deal with something like that. You're like, all right, we can take legal actions. The tough thing is that oftentimes the law firms, the law firms will be more swayed, obviously, from these corporate interests, from what would be happening and sharing. This has also been brought up in even like who may even be the legal representation from a city or a state or federal government. It's oftentimes you'll see the lead counsel in that works in city politics, and then 2 years later they're working with the largest corporation within the city doing the same type of things from another angle, and it becomes overwhelming for many residents. As you guys kind of know, y'all check the archives when I said, we dealing with what's happening over here, breaking covenants and just what is provided for you as a resident versus what's also provided for corporate actors within the theater of America. And it can become so overwhelming because, especially like we're getting into salt, like I say, I've only gone there because I was a truck driver, but the amount of corporate interest, even just driving through there, it's like you're taking on basically what you're taking on, and this is always uplifted. And one of the key critiques, though, I do think that the leadership of Coleman Young is was necessary for the city of Detroit. But one of the key critiques during his time, and then even a lot of times today of any leadership, is the thought process is politically, it's like, but these will be jobs, and it's like. The argument of basically work being a reason to cause detrimental impacts to our community, while oftentimes, sometimes our tax dollars are paying for these things that'll detrimentally impact our community. It becomes it becomes just it can enrage people.
Yeah, and that's what we're facing now. Every time corporation came for something, they always said it's going to provide jobs. But what we did not see was jobs, because Marathon at the time, and still in my mind today, and the salt company, their minority and Black employeeship is very low.
Well, I can tell you a Marathon story. This is going to be a classic one. I think you'll like it. But and in other iterations of life, after truck driving, I end up with a job at the Michigan Citizen newspaper. Shout out to the Kelly family for welcoming me there. And this is the interesting thing sometimes when it comes to like these iterations of these corporations too, because they were coming and making a pitch and expanding what would happen over there, off 75. I'm a Piston fan. It's after the Pistons won. They paint the oil tanker of basketball. It's like, hey, go Pistons. So then they come into the office, and they come into an office with a known preacher from the community. They come in with, as I say, it's like almost like iterations of attorney. A very attractive Black woman that's an attorney. They come in with even a Black guy that's attractive, white guy that's attractive, white woman that's attractive. They come in with like a scientist. They also come in with somebody that was a community organizer in the community, and they lay out, hey, we want to expand, and it's going to help create jobs, and we need city council to give us we're asking for these considerations and tax abatements of like $15 million.
No,
I'm like, okay,
so try $187 million.
This iteration was 15 when they were asking it. And they're like, and then, they give their whole pitch and everything. I was involved in this because they would have they would have editorial meetings sometimes. And even though I was working in circulation at times, they'd be like, well, what papers sell the most? And I just ask the simple questions. I'm like, all right, for $15 million, how many jobs is it going to produce? Like, it stopped them. And then one of the people that I could tell really was like in the corporation and not in the theater of this, he said, well, we're probably like 8 to 10. I was like, 8 to 10 jobs? How much is y'all paying these people? I'm like, 8 to 10 jobs for $15 million, and you need to get that from the city of Detroit? That don't even make sense. You working for Marathon. This is y'all in the oil. Like, don't y'all have enough money why do y'all need money from the city if you already in like the biggest business in the world? And then the preacher and the community guy said, you don't understand, and da-da-da-da, and they gonna help out with da-da-da-da. And it's like, it's never, it was one of those things where it's like, this just logically doesn't make sense.
It does nothing. No. In that day and time and now, 2 plus 2 does not equal 4. Okay, because the numbers are skewed. And so that's what they always go on, promises of jobs. And that's why we fought so many environmental battles against companies expanding, open up, and operating with the promise of jobs. And those jobs never come, and those jobs are never given to Black people and people from the community. And we found that out. So it's been a hard fought battle.
And it's like a chicken or egg, because usually the argument is always like, the people here don't have an education. And so always usually the argument that they say. They're not training, and we tried, and we went over here, and we just gave money more to the organizer and the preacher we worked with. And they said that they going to help do a training in their school or in their church or whatever.
The sellouts. You had because Black churches, if you look, they come from a history and legacy of poverty. Okay? So when you look at that, when you have a poor Black church and they're struggling, if someone gives them $100,000, that is bread and butter to them to continue their church. And those were the promises. We were sold out by many of the ministers. We were sold out by some of the community members that went against us. And so we still fight. And accusations were thrown left and right. Oh, you get money. No, we don't get any money and have not gotten any money. And when we did sue the Marathon after the 2003 blackout, that where all the pollution controls, when we lost power, they lost power. All the pollution controls failed and didn't operate. Poison was spewed into the air, for miles. And when the lawsuit came, it was our white community of Melvindale, a suburban city of Melvindale, and then the back end of South End Dearborn, where our Arabic but predominantly white back then, Arabic population is. But by Marathon being in 48217, we were not included in the lawsuit. But one of our residents, Sylvia Jackson, sister Brenda, I can't remember Elam, but Brenda's passed on now. She read a little article about a lawsuit. So she called her sister called me, but the sister got on the bus and went down there because she didn't have a car, and she asked the judge, asked them could they speak, and they allowed her to speak.
Wow.
And she actually stopped the settlement that would have happened that day from Melvindale and Dearborn, and told the judge, the Black community of Southwest Detroit 48217, which Marathon is in that zip code, we're not in the lawsuit. So the judge stopped the lawsuit, and at the time it was the attorney Peter Masuga and Liddell law firm that handled it. They had to come back to the Black community and say, well, you don't have to do anything. We can enter you into this lawsuit.
Yeah.
And that's how Blacks got in. But the judge would not allow, in another lawsuit, and even in that lawsuit, to sue on health. He allowed to sue on to be included in the class action lawsuit on property damage. The roof, the sidewalks, whatever. That was even, you know what I mean? So they won't allow you to sue on health, but they'll allow you to sue on property damage, as you talked about roofs, because what goes up, the toxins, the lead, the mercury, the acid, the hexavalent chromium, the toluene, the benzene, it erodes property, and then when the rain comes, it goes into the soil. So your property damage was what you could sue on. Not the soil damage, but the property damage to your house. And that's what we were trying to sue the salt company on. And then we were told that this by one from one, we got the information, you know, when we were trying to talk to a judge. Well, that's just natural land settlement over the years. You know, you can see where the house and the foundation was. When you build up your soil, it covers the connection between the foundation and the house. You never see it. But the blasting from the salt company, getting back to the salt company, was causing depressions in our yards where you could actually see your foundation because the ground had sunk. So you could go see, you could see the cinder block foundation separated from the brick upper house because the ground had sunk. But we were never able to successfully sue the salt company for that damage. But we were able to get the
city council to say, all right, you got to do something different.
Then this is what they told us. They say, well, you guys sold your mineral rights. So then we as residents had to do our own investigation. So we became investigators. We became community scientists. And we found out many of the people had not sold their mineral rights because you have mineral rights underground. And then a lot of people, we learned, if I'm correct, that you even have certain mineral rights or air rights above your home, if I'm still correct. But that's so far ago. And, well, you know, that's like 20, 30 years ago. How can you remember? But we actually had to advocate for our community of Southwest Detroit 48217. And that's why Dr. Leonard and we started identifying ourselves as 48217. And then people thought it was a joke. Why did you do that? Because we identified ourselves with our postal zip code to separate from Greater Detroit. Because as I mentioned before, 75 was being built when I was a child. 75 was not there. And Kimony Recreation Center was being built when I was a child. And 75 runs right, the backyard of our community center is I-75. Matter of fact, before they built up this, what they call a sound wall, cars were running into the rec center's land. And just last year, a young man tipped over right in back of Kimony on the fence, and he perished because his car flipped over. He died coming off the expressway ramp right there. And then our backdrop is Marathon. When you go and you look at all this beautiful greenery, our backdrop is a big, nasty oil refinery. And that is so in River Rouge as well with Zug Island. Delray, I should say, but people don't know. Zug Island is actually in River Rouge. They own that. And so with U.S. Steel, now formerly Great Lakes Steel, people's backdrop and the slag piles are people's vision that they see. When we do these tours, we show them how we coexist with industry. Then we talk about the health impacts that happen. So it wasn't that I made this a career, I'm going to go to college, because I went to college for something totally different. You know what I mean? Henry Ford, Wayne County, and eventually transitioning to Wayne State University. So my education was in communications. It was not in environmental justice. Environmental justice is a life-learned education living in a community that has been detrimentally impacted by pollution.
And as you uplift this, the other realities that I found out, especially like the fight here, and I know you can expand on it, is it's so many things to learn, a lot of jargon, a lot of processes.
Yes.
But another one of the key things that always is uplifted, even like when these companies are closed down, is they'll become brownfields.
Legacy pollution. And people don't know. If you look at, I think Detroit is 144 square miles. As they say, we help put the world on wheels.
Yeah.
From Dearborn to Delray to Detroit. And we actually are, as you said, a brownfield.
So I'll explain, and I find this out basically kind of connected to the covenant, but a brownfield is land that is looked at from the EPA, where they say that this is so contaminated that if you're a developer and you want to do anything, you're going to be given considerations and a lot of money, tax breaks and things like that just to do something on this land.
To mitigate.
The tough thing, similar to it happened like a couple years after I was in high school, similar to like it's so many people in Detroit in poverty that if you're a student and you go to DPS, you just get free lunch. They ain't even looking at your parents' tax income check or anything, or like tax return. So similar is the brownfield as far as like land across the city of Detroit. So what that means is that these corporations already have an understanding that no matter where you are in the city of Detroit, that the land is so contaminated that if a corporation wanted to act and they just have like a department to say, hey, let's get that brownfield money, they can get the brownfield money.
They go after the brownfield money. We actually fought a company from getting brownfield dollars, tax abatement, and property tax abatement. And that, I think it's the Great Lake Petroleum Company. And it's at 12500 Stocker, right there off of 4th Street. I can walk to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Right next to the Marathon Asphalt Company. That is right on 4th Street. Well, they opened up another asphalt company right next door. We fought them because Dr. Leonard was on the community board for the brownfield, and she told us, and we went out in force and we talked to the brownfield people, and we actually fought them from getting those tax abatement, those dollars. Because what we learned is when they do brownfield dollars, for every dollar they put in, we give them 2 taxpayer dollars.
So basically, if you guys understand what we're saying, is these people have recognized that they're polluting. They're going to continue polluting. They're acting as if like it's good because we're going to clean up this part of it. But we're paying for it.
We're paying for the cleanup. And so I think the company was buying it, and what they actually did, they did something illegally. What they did, the contract that the old company operated on, this company came in and operated under the same contract, doing a different business. And we brought that to the forefront. Because they were doing asphalt roofing at the company before. Now they're going to do asphalt something. I can't remember. Pallets and peels or something. But back then, it was community that brought it out and brought it to the forefront. If it had not been for our research and our work, they would, absorb that other contract and work freely, and it was illegal. We brought it out. So we had to become lawyers, community scientists, environmentalists. And then, as you said about brownfield, many of the areas that have lost factories like the old Packard and over there the Cadillac and Fleetwood and Delray and Turnstead and the glue factory and the linen company. Those, in my mind, should have been considered Superfund sites. And we should have gotten federal dollars to clean them up, because right now the challenge that we have is the Gordie Howe Bridge. The Gordie Howe Bridge is coming from Canada, being paid for Canada, but we in Michigan, we will pay those dollars that they built that bridge with back through the tolls. But what people didn't understand, that area that they have put that bridge, more than, I can't think of how many acres, I think it's 171 acres. All of that was a brownfield.
Wow.
Nobody went in and mitigated that land. In other words, cleaned it up. No, they just started building and spreading that pollution everywhere, through the dirt, through the air, everywhere.
And there's so many there's so many acts during the gubernatorial tenure of Snyder that
and
are like
Engler and Granholm.
I mean, we can definitely
and Granholm.
We can definitely
and our current governor now, Whitmer.
Yeah.
So sorry.
But Snyder definitely, I thought that the aggressiveness towards even like moving on what would happen with the Howell Bridge and continuing on
Granholm,
through this one.
with a swipe of her pen, signed it in because they wanted to put it more downriver and in a white, more affluent community. And they came out and said, aren't we good people? And Rhonda Anderson, as I mentioned, she said, aren't we good people too? And then with the swipe of her pen going out that door, Granholm put it into place, and they moved it into Delray. And they did Delray a disservice. They did River Rouge a disservice. They did Southwest Detroit, Ecorse, in any community, the Mexican town area, all of that's is a disservice. And then that would in my opinion, cause the demise of our high school, because how is that high school going to exist at buttressing a bridge? Because when you mentioned something about being a truck driver, over 80% of the pollution, contamination in the world comes from automobile, truck, and light truck activity. So, and this is man-made. Carbon emissions that's destroying our ozone and the good ozone, because we have good ozone and bad ozone. And then you look at it, we're in a climate crisis internationally.
And in that, another thing that's not often brought up in the thought process of, I think, most Detroiters, period, but the busiest international crossing in America is actually the one here. You don't think about it like that, because I don't think it's ever uplifted in any room I'm in, other than when I'm in the room with a lot of like business people and they talk about why Detroit is so important. And that's where, like, you know, you're going to have, like I say, when you become a truck driver, you start seeing things differently. Like you end up with these docks. And right now it's even more truck traffic because it isn't like the 80s or the 90s where you have like these massive warehouses that keep things all the time. You basically kind of want to, the thought process is we want to build whatever part this is, like at, let's say, like we build the part at 12 o'clock. We want to stack up enough of these to get on a pallet by 4 o'clock. The truck comes at 5 o'clock. The truck's driving. So basically it's going to be more traffic because we want everything to be first in, first out.
And then you have to realize the Detroit River is one of the busiest waterways in the world. And it's right here. And what is it? Predominantly Black city. That's really, in my opinion, under white control, even though we have a Black city council. And then, you know, the illegality of the bankruptcy and the emergency manager and the financial manager that impacted Detroit. And then you have to look at the legacy of corruption of the city of Detroit. And then the legacy of corruption goes on to industry. Because back when the Marathon announced its $2.2 billion D-Hoop expansion, they were going from processing what they call sweet oil to heavy oil. And that's, give you a comparison. Sweet oil would be honey, and the heavy oil would be black dirty molasses, the tar sands, because they wanted a cheaper way of getting oil to create fuel, right? So they went to, we fighting Line 5, right? From Alberta, Canada, dirty tar sands. Where do they end up? Right at Marathon. Where's Marathon? Right in the middle of community. Because you have to look at where these industries are located. They're located right in community.
And I mean, so many of these things, like even uplifted, you kind of came in talking about something, you know, just connecting the We the People and Monica and Deborah and the work they do. But even you know, and this ain't even that long ago, but like, you know, sometimes you stumble upon some of this. I'm gonna excuse my French right here. You stumble upon some of this bullshit that you don't even know is happening. Like when Detroit was like holding all this trash for Toronto. Like you're like, when did this start happening?
The incinerator, and not only Toronto, but Indiana. Our trash was at that incinerator because we worked on incinerator as well. We were, you know, as environmental justice advocates, we've worked on so much. We worked on radiation contamination possibilities off of the old Revere site that was located when the seawall collapsed back, I think, in 2019, and it took Canada and a ferry operator to say, hey, something's going on over here. Then when we look and we go try to find out under the leadership of a young man by the name of Justin Onwenu, who's now running for office with the Sierra Club, this young man brought in hundreds of people to talk about that seawall collapse. And when we found out about the seawall collapse, that had to kick the gears of Building Safety and Engineering, BSAD, they had not inspected our waterway in years.
Yeah.
They didn't even know what existed on our waterway along our waterfront. And they found so many companies in violations, they started giving out ticket after ticket. And then we were concerned about the contaminants that fell into the Detroit River. Were they still harmful? Because in my opinion, and what I've heard, you cannot get rid of radiation contamination. And the old way, and the old way was dig a hole, dump it in, cover it up. So with that collapse? What caused the collapse? Rushing water, in my opinion. So that's erosion of our seawall.
Yeah.
And that's still in question in my mind. Then it gave the city opportunity to say, we're going to clean up our act. We're going to start investigating what's here, what's there, because Detroit bulk storage was found to be operating illegally. And what they do through their ingenious mind, and with the help of, I think, some elected officials and city officials, they went above our head and went to the state. Forget home rule city. They went to the state. And that was under this previous administration, city led by Mayor Duggan. And my thing is, we have to look at the corruption that's throughout the United States, throughout the world. And this current administration, from the top down, is helping a lot of people to take a retrospective view of American government. And they're finding so much corruption.
And I mean, the challenge of a lot of this stuff, similar to like tying this stuff together from like the citizen, even now to doing a lot of these Detroiters differences, like there's awareness of many of these challenges, and people still sit there and say like, hey, what can we do? And I definitely am, it's back to, at the heart of it, you all know how I feel. My dad's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, it's a whole world. If you really just want to be greedy and you want to make money and stuff, like it's a whole world you can get into. It becomes tougher. Even Yusuf lifted this up last time I talked to him. It becomes tougher because it's people that are in this space of community development and community organizing that have such compromised interest that it's like, why don't you just do something else?
Yes. And I can't understand politics to a degree. They pander and they beg for your vote and your support. And then there's supposed to be civil servants that work on your behalf. But once they get in office, it changes. Then now you work for them. And you cannot get, that's what we have a challenge with right now. We have challenges. People are considered very important people, VIPs. I don't feel there should be any VIPs. If you're a civil servant, you work for the people. Humble yourself and work for the people. Because I don't feel there's anybody more important than me, more important than you, more important than my senior neighbor over here, more important than that child over here. Because our educational system in Detroit is crap. And then we see, in my opinion, a lot of the leadership has faltered because now they have bought into the same old, same old. You know what I mean? And we've seen administrations go down from the same old, but there's no equality when it comes to passing out justice. You can see one mayor go to prison, but another mayor come in and do the same thing, and he's glorified as
very much so.
The great white hope to save these little black people. They didn't save me, and they didn't save Detroit. What they did, they came in, they picked at the caucus of Detroit for their own personal wealth and gain. And then they're taking the same corrupted money to run their campaign to continue to lead and run the ship as usual. Okay? No matter of who they harm. And a lot of people, you speak of, no. Our people cannot get into the work of environmental justice because, like I told you, environmental justice encompasses everything, health, education, everything. And it falls under environment because where you grew up, how you grew up, that's what shapes you and the trauma and drama that you've dealt with from racism, systemic racism, if you're a person that is black or a person of color or a person that's low income. Is either rich or poor these days. And that's what they're doing. They're getting rid of anybody that made an affordable living. They're wiping that all out. And then you got to be beholden because then they're the ones passing out the food. They're the ones pumping out the gas. They're the ones who can come in and cut your utilities off. So we have to look at it holistically. How are they strangling the people they are supposed to work for?
Yeah, very much so, which I guess, now we're at a point where, as we get closer to a close here, and thank you so much for sharing your time and, so much of your journey and your wisdom and knowledge into this, but, because you've been called upon and moved into this space, how do you like, I guess, like, seeing so much that is and so many more people calling upon you, how do you make those decisions of, the time in the day and how to, space everything out? Because you
Oof.
still have you still have family, you still
Yeah.
have so many other, spaces and places to, like, fill the cup up, because I know, like you even said, I gotta turn my phone off because I know it's gonna be busy, because
Yeah.
so many people have seen you, and really a lot of the phone calls you get and the people that reach out to you, most would think these are the calls that a resident would be giving an elected official, but
Right.
you get.
And what it is that when it really came to the forefront, excuse me, excuse me, when COVID hit,
Mm,
we already knew that community was in dire straits, and we were
mm,
really holding on to a rope and as a lifeline.
yeah,
COVID hit.
mm,
And when we realized the federal government did not act, did not inform the people that
yeah,
we were going into a pandemic where we would lose millions of lives, they kept it a secret because they didn't want to panic the people. The people
yeah,
have a right to know.
mm,
And they did not tell us. And then they found out ways to go around what tell us. And then they let this disease spread internationally, wherever it was coming from. But we
yeah,
learned that COVID was traveling on COVID droplets, were traveling in on the dust particles, and the communities that were being mostly impacted were Black communities.
mm,
Because the death rate among the Black people was higher because we were already vulnerable, because we were already sick from pollution, being exposed to pollution for generation after generation. So when
mm,
COVID hit us, it was killing 3 or 4 people in the family because
mm,
they had compromised lungs, or they had cancer, or they had diabetes, or they had hypertension.
mm,
And so we had to triage our own community because the government wasn't coming to save us. So we learned to do mutual aid, gather money, and give the people money. Then
mm,
a small group of women, we got together and we created what I call a caravan of food. We started, I was doing it by myself. Then my friend Cynthia and my friend Jackie, they were sisters. They both got COVID,
wow,
and Cynthia ended up passing away, but we would get up,
condolences,
we would go, and we would go to the pantries, and we would collect food from Tuesday through Saturday, every
wow,
pantry around suburbs in the city, and we would take it to people and put it on their front porch,
mm,
call them up, say food is out, water's
wow,
out there, if you need me to go get medicine. So we had to triage and save our own community
mm,
because we could not get the resources. And
wow,
then you see everything went down, jobs shut down.
yeah,
People couldn't go to work. If they couldn't go to work, they couldn't get a paycheck. So we had to learn how to triage. And it was nothing that was organized. It was something that we were thrown into because environmental justice work is reactionary work.
mm,
We react when something happened. If
wow,
there's a blow up at Marathon, we react. How to get
mhm,
people out if it's exposure.
yeah,
If it's, you see what I'm saying? Or if it's a flood, people trapped in which
mm,
we got flooded, the train derailed, we
yeah,
couldn't get out. How could we service our people?
mm,
Right? And then if the cell phone tower went down, how could we communicate? We had to go door to door. So we had to do the old school way. Be a neighbor to your neighbor.
hmm,
Put the word commune into community. And we had to do that. And I'm sure that pockets of people did that all over the nation,
mm,
helping one another. And that's what we have to do now with this administration, because we're on the lifeline. Because what they have done, they have put smart meters on our electrical. They
yes,
have put smart meters on our water.
yep,
They put our gas meters outside so they can
yeah,
turn a
so they
switch
can,
and
yeah,
don't have to move and come to your
very
house and
much
shut
so,
you down.
yep,
Then you see they've changed our roadways.
mhm,
What they did, they rebuilt I-75, got rid of the Woodward exit, rebuilt Grand Boulevard, and got rid of the passes where we could go into Belle Isle. They did that. That was constructed. That's part of the master plan. How can we shut a city down within minutes?
mm,
And they did that, and they did it in predominantly Black communities.
mm,
To protect what? Downtown. What are you protecting downtown as people at home? Nothing but buildings.
mm.
But your access, egress, is it egress and egress?
Yeah.
coming in and going.
Yeah.
So you have to look at how they're doing things. So transportation racism, systemic racism, educationally, they're destroying our schools. You know what I mean? And then they were destroying cities and control the cities through emergency managers. Detroit, in my opinion, never was bankrupt.
I mean, we spoke of this. Rest in peace to my late godmother, Joanne Watson.
Yes.
Always will speak to that. But even my longer interview with Anthony Adams, to make it short, like I always uplift about this, that during an expansion of Cobo Hall with the other counties, at one point in time, one of the key things that why Detroit is owed so much money, what's uplifted is that at one point in time, if you are non-resident working in the city of Detroit, the tax that you owe was about 3.5%. This transition happens to like about half of that, 1.75%, during a Coleman Young administration. That soon after the state, it was uplifted then, another Governor Engler Act, that will pay that. Dennis Archer, I think, forego pursuing that, and that carried over into a Mayor Kilpatrick administration. But now it's to the point where the state of Michigan, technically connected to that non-resident tax, owes billions. I can only imagine the amount, like even just when you look on paper, the amount of people that work in the city of Detroit but don't live in Detroit, especially with the lack of residency laws.
And then you look at taking control of our water system with GLEWA, Great Lakes Water Authority.
Oh, I mean,
and then they've stolen the assets of the city and said, "Oh, it's for this benefits you," but actually it harms people. Now, I want to get to something that we did not talk about.
Okay, please do.
Just recently, a judgment was come down through a federal court where the United States EPA was sued ES Coke Battery, and then the judge allowed the parent company DTE to come in. And if you notice, DTE have gotten rate increase, and they're asking for another on the backs of the citizens, talking about infrastructure improvement. They did the same thing with GLEWA, infrastructure improvement. Water rate increase off the backs of the people. All capital improvements come from the rate increases off the backs of the people. So with this $120 million judgment that was recently had, which is being appealed by DTE, we were interveners as Sierra Club members. Myself, Dr. Leonard, and Vicki Dobbins from River Rouge, we did testimony about the $120 million. Now, the $120 million, $100 million goes to the U.S. Treasury, $20 million comes to community. But as I mentioned, DT is appealing it. But for it to be for Ecorse, River Rouge, and Southwest Detroit, $20 million is not going to go far.
No, not at all.
Southwest Detroit 48217. So we're pecking at a mountain with a hammer, and we're chipping away. So this victory is hope. It's hope that our administration, because we were fearful that Trump was going to stop the lawsuit because he stopped a lot of the lawsuits, but this one prevailed. This is hope that community voice is being heard, that we're being heard, and someone is paying attention, because we never thought that the EPA would sue. But since ES Coke Battery, which was purchased from my understanding, from U.S. Steel, which is when I found out it may be leased, DTE wanted to separate. But DTE was involved from day one to day end in the daily communication and litigation of this lawsuit. So the judge included DTE. So that gives us hope that many battles that we have fought, the war is still raging, and we can win on some fronts. It's possible.
And I remember you sent me the story. I read it. Planet Detroit has an excellent story on it, but many others have covered it as well. I'm glad you shared that here. So, because it's been tough working with Solidarity, also working with We Want Green too, finding out so much more about DTE, and then even leading up to that, I did some research on behalf of like a communications call with my firm specifically about DTE. And it's unique because this is like the first year of COVID when we did it. And at the time, DTE was not extremely favorable, but more favorable than the water department at that time. And what makes it also very difficult with DTE is that this is, as in when I went to business school, they say this is like a naturalized monopoly. It needs to be a monopoly because of the safety, quote unquote, concerns of residents. The rate increases are decided upon by the MPSC. So this is a board of members that are appointed by the governor.
And DTE pays part of their salary. And then, in my opinion, you just mentioned a monopoly. DTE is a monopoly controlling our lights and our gas, and that's in violation, in my opinion, of the antitrust laws.
And this is where, like, the argument's always made that it's a naturalized. And the tough thing is every 6 months, anytime DTE can get a rate increase, they're going to get a rate increase.
And where else can you go besides in our area for you can go to Consumers Energy in the further north and all that, but where else can we go to be an energy provider? Because DTE is a poisonous spiderweb octopus because they have all the infrastructure. Right?
Very much
They're putting in infrastructure for the EV. They're putting in infrastructure for the AI data centers. That is, the pushes for. That's another danger. So we have to continue that in another conversation.
Yeah, solar, definitely solar. The solar contract that it looks like the city's going to pay, where the city is. And it's been a tough one because it's a lot of people I've worked with in community that support this.
I was
but
sitting
to
there
me, I still think that, like, and it's tough because, like, I have what's in my heart and my mind, and then it's people I know where it's like, how do you stand on this? It's like people are going to be living in a community next to a solar field and not getting none of that power.
Yes.
That's like that's like the people in South Africa living next to a diamond mine and not getting any money connected to the diamond.
And I was sitting there when the former mayor Duggan feigned that, DTE is going to have to compete for that contract. We knew already then that the backdoor deal had been made.
By saying that they're even going to compete.
And I was against it. I was against it.
Yeah.
That when they putting those solar arrays along there. And I went over to a couple of solar arrays. Matter of fact, we had a press conference last year by the concrete crusher right over by the solar array. And the thing is, people don't understand that Dr. Leonard always told us, follow the money. It's not about right or wrong. It's follow the money.
Yeah.
And you know what money is. Money is power and greed. And what was said, money is the root of all evil. And that's what we see up in our administration is evil.
Definitely. I mean, it's certain things that happen, and if another solar company were to get that opportunity, it could break the covenant law of basically DTE. And I mean, I've sat in spaces and read more about this, but it becomes tough because this is the other reality of DTE Energy. DTE Energy spends an exorbitant amount of money through philanthropic.
Look at their beautiful commercials.
Yeah, I mean, but not just commercials. I mean, the community work, the alignment that they have with faith-based institutions, non-faith-based institutions, community efforts. I mean, Beacon Park, like, so it's one of those things that it's like, Beacon Park is great. I appreciate some of the efforts and some of the artistic things that have been done, but I would much rather have a bill that's not like $493 a month. And I'm at a point where, I'm just very blessed to be in a position where I can pay that. But I look at so many of the neighbors in my community and I say to myself, like, the amount of dignity you lose to go through some of the channels of what you have to give and to sit and present and go through all of this just to prove that you don't have enough money to pay something that is consistently going up as much as it can go up every time out. And you got elders in my community that can barely walk, that have to go through the lack of this dignity that they can't afford this stuff.
If they took the money that they collected in rate increases and help assist the people that they're shutting off, we would not have anybody's home going dark in a city of Detroit or in the state of Michigan, their service area. If they that money they took that they're asking for. And see, that's where we fail. We fail the people. I'm talking about the people, our legislators, failed us when they allow companies to look at the profits they make, and then allowing the capital improvements to come off the backs of the ratepayer. I mean, look at your bill. You see line, recoup. That's when they did the alleyways, when they were cleaning up and chopping down the trees, they put that on the bill of the rate they were supposed to make. But I fought our city government for that. Because when you go to Allen Park, Lincoln Park, their wires and their alleys are maintained by DTE. But Detroit, predominantly Rice City, they allowed them to take away our alley lights.
Yeah.
When they put us in the dark, the criminals' crime went up, in my opinion, as far as breaking and entering. Because the criminals walk in our alleys, and you got to pay $15 a month extra if you want a light in the back of your alleyway to light up your alley.
Yeah.
So, we look at how we have been failed.
I mean, and it's also like, shout out to Edith Lee Payne, another person that works so much in community in this work and other iterations. But like, I mean, you know, when I found out like the law is technically that a branch isn't supposed to be at least within 6 feet of a wire, and you can go in any backyard in the city of Detroit and you can completely see. And then we also see the contracting companies.
All over.
None of those contracting companies are based from Detroit. I see most places not even, some of them not even based in Michigan.
And where are the black people?
That is
working
the
road commission, working the water department, working on DTE. The jobs are not there. And when you talk about unemployment, when you look at the demographics of unemployment, who has the highest rate of unemployment is African Americans, black people. So as I said,
another critique I always uplift with DTE too is like we're paying the most for this, but even the service itself is not good. It still is unreliable. That little bit of money you get back was like fights from you and Solidarity and some other, like if you have your power's off for a day, but technically because of what I do, that day my power is off could have been the day that is the most lucrative for my argument. And they say, well, it shouldn't make a difference because you weren't using nothing because it wasn't on. It's like, nah, that's not a legitimate discussion to really have with people. So it's like we're paying the most for subpar service. And also this whole time since COVID and even before, the amount, because this is a publicly shared company as well. So this is an incorporated company. So you can go online and see this, but you know, you can buy a share and get the 10K. The amount of profits that's been made from this energy company right here, DTE, has exorbitantly went up since COVID and continues to go up. So the thought process is, why do you always need more money from us in these increases when you continually are making so much more profit? And I definitely know in community right now, I mean, I was at the policy conference, I had to look back at it, but now I know that they have a black woman that is the CEO of DTE. And I mean, I'm definitely applauding black leadership, but even with this, we got to even be more mindful about a lot of this is, I mean, Consumers has a black woman that's a COO. I mean, it's still walking with us in community. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Well, we have to look at too, has this person that is in new leadership, as she's ingrained into that corporate culture mentality. And is she there really to benefit people? And then, you know, because you know what? We don't need any more Clarence Thomases. We don't need any more. I can't think of the guy's name that's all behind Trump, and Trump disrespects him. But when you look at the Detroit area and you look at who DTE services in the community that I come from, we have the highest rate of power outages and the longest rate of power outage duration in the DTE network. They admitted, and they have those. They are now putting that data on their website for people to see. So we're even fighting that. We're fighting that because we are now we're in the throes of a grant that will provide some of our residents with solar power. Then we have to educate them on solar power. You know, battery storage and things like that. So we're in it because when you talked about the solar arrays go to the municipality buildings, right?
That's what it says now.
That's right. And so we're fighting for the true solar for all, because when they took that money before Trump got in and started chopping it off, how is it going to be solar power for all? Right.
And I'm one to say, even though the people that work, I've had this debate, I'm one to say, because technically, like, I don't think a lot of people in Detroit know this. Little Caesars Arena is owned by the city of Detroit because of the money, you know, spent into it. So I'm one to say a lot of these corporate assets. It is,
but no, it's not a corporate asset. You have to know what it is. We allowed the Olympia Entertainment and the Illich family free land, taxpayer dollars, no community benefits to the surrounding community. So no, we don't own it. what it is.
Paying for it.
We paying for it because they take all concessions and everything, and they got basically leasing it for $1 a year.
Yeah.
But then the economic growth around the arena.
Yeah.
But how many Black businesses are established around Little Caesars Arena? Because what I saw you talk about gentrification of the home ownership, gentrification of the Black businesses, because they forced the Black people out. And you see what happened. All the Black ownership up and down Woodward, gone. All the Black ownership up and down Cass, is gone. It's gone. Second and all that. It's white. The gentrification, it was a double-edged sword. Swoosh, get rid of the Black people.
Man, oh man. Yeah,
okay,
it's so much more. All right, well, I got to close with these great questions, but I gave you something, but I also, before this, if somebody wants to give to your organization, the efforts you're making, where should they connect?
Okay, well, we're just now working on our website.
Okay.
But we are the original United Citizens of Southwest Detroit.
Okay.
And our address is a P.O. Box, P.O. Box 18012, River Rouge, Michigan 48218. The original United Citizens of Southwest Detroit, P.O. Box 18012, River Rouge, Michigan 48218.
Okay. All right. With that being said, now classic Detroit is different questions. You didn't say it, but you alluded to it already. Your very first car, your make and model year you got it.
Wow. It was a Cutlass Supreme Oldsmobile.
For real? Oh, man. Oh, you stepped into a Cuddy.
I was, a UAW worker at heart, so of course I bought me a GM. Oldsmobile was a beautiful deep maroon.
I was going to ask what color.
A deep maroon, yeah.
Man.
And, it was hard for me because my uncle was one of the first skilled tradesmen in Cadillac.
Okay.
So when I went to buy the car, they wasn't trying to sell me the car, help me out. And so I had to leave and go back and get my uncle because I was a woman and had my uncle negotiate to help me get a car.
All right, well, shout out to Uncle for dealing with all that madness that was going. And boy, like I say, them old school Cuddies, that's real metal too. That was not
and it had a V8 engine, so that car lasted me a long time.
I'm with it. It's like all my friends see that and be like, oh man, I put sounds in there and everything.
Yeah.
All right, you're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson. What 2 songs you playing?
Oh God. I'm gonna say Dance with My Father.
Okay. Luther Vandross, that's sentimental. Okay.
And then another one that I utilized in college for a play that I created in one of my courses is Freedom by Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
Because what I did, I transitioned the song in freedom, what you're trying to do to me. Not a love song, but for Black people, that should have been our anthem. You know what I mean? And so that's what those 2 songs.
Okay, I'm with it. Lady Ree, always gonna get some love from me. You know what I'm saying? That's another Tennessee to Detroit connection as well.
Yeah.
If y'all follow the history.
Okay.
And last question. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
You know what? I'm gonna tell you. As we look at the street names and the racism in it, I would like to say that I would like to name it after I'm sorry, I'm a radical. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And by any means necessary.
Okay.
Malcolm X.
I'm with it. I'm definitely with that. Boy, if Woodward was Malcolm X, I think that would change a lot of the gentrification and certain people coming here. It's definitely going to attract somebody saying like, yeah, there we go. Because I mean, I can only imagine, it's going to be some different investments that come connected to some things like that. I'm with it. And he definitely walked these streets and connected throughout a lot of neighborhoods. Really, definitely, I think the Inkster home is going through, like, it's going to be like a project to open up to welcome people, but just all through many communities. Another one of those, as you talk about legends that were in Southwest Detroit and down in that pocket, he was another one. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to share with you and your audience.
Always. Peace.
Detroit. Detroit.